The Rebecca Sun is back with another gold nugget in this very special edition of the Sundial. It's really good to see you. It's been a minute since we last saw you. You've now launched a Substack and you're out there putting yourself out on the internets. How's that going? How are you doing?
It's really, surprisingly, it's been very creatively freeing, I mean, it's very slow going. I'm a very slow writer, and I'm not terribly, um, like, I'm not very prolific, but, it's been really fun. This is the first time in my career that I've ever just had, pure open canvas. I really think about the attention economy, and I think you have trusted me with, this number of megabytes in your kilobytes in your inbox and your time. And so I really want to be worthwhile. I want to be not, I don't want to be self-indulgent. And so I still have that, like, those priorities in mind
Yeah.
whenever I post.
Well, you are extremely worthwhile to me and to my audience. And so it's a delight to have you back on. And I know that it's a really apropos of this moment we're in to talk about K-pop demon hunters. And I can't imagine a better person to helm that conversation than you. There's so much out there right now, and a lot of articles and a lot of perspectives and a lot of non-diverse perspectives as well. Um, so it's really great to have you sort of walk us through what this moment really means.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm excited too. I mean, this is first of all, it's just such a feel-good story for the industry, and I think Hollywood really needs some feel-good stories right now. And so this is one that, it's a surprise sensation. It's something that comes out of nowhere, and so people really feel like, oh, if they could succeed, maybe I don't need like the full marketing muscle of a huge pre-release campaign to hit it big. It's something that has really been surprisingly appealing across many different sectors, right? There are certainly the very strong kids contingent,
Yeah.
who should not be counted out. But this is, I think, the thing. This is a project that is really appealing to Gen Z. It's really appealing to millennials. I've seen people who are older just they watch it without their kids when they or they enjoy it with their kids and it's not super annoying like some kids content is. um I don't think this is kids content, by the way, but it just happens to be very attractive to them. So it's a great industry story. It's a little juicy because of the like studio
Yeah.
sort of switch around, so it's appealing from that inside baseball trade standpoint. It's just wonderful. I think K-pop Demon Hunters is, for me, I will say I did not have the foresight to see that coming. I've known about it for a long time. I I feel bad. Like I passed up the opportunity to go to the advanced screening back in like May, because I was just like, I have to be very selective about what I leave the house for because I have a little one at home. And I've been tracking K-pop projects in Hollywood for like a decade.
Yeah.
Nothing has panned out. And I'm happy to enumerate them for you if you
I would
want. But
love that. And why do you think that is?
okay, so let's first let's I'll give you like a short listing of the things. Like some of these projects people will have heard of and some people will haven't, right? And so like I think that if you really pay attention to this stuff, you might remember Rebel Wilson has been attached to two different K-pop projects. There was a script she sold to Lionsgate, but then she's also attached to a separate K-pop road trip movie that's being produced or was is being produced by Linda Obst and Mickey Lee of CJ Entertainment. So these are big name producers. She and Charles Melton were supposed to be in this one. There is Netflix itself optioned a K-pop YA romance novel 4 years ago, back in 2021. Ironically, the author of that novel is married to one of K-pop Demon Hunters directors, Chris Applehans. A long time ago, when I first when I first got to LA, like, there was a project that Sony was trying to do with Simon Cowell. I've read that script. We can talk about that. I have a friend who was asked to give notes on a totally different project that was set up at Fox International. didn't work out. Literally the only K-pop movie that has come out scripted. I'm talking about scripted. I'm not talking about the documentaries about like real
Right.
life acts. The only K-pop scripted project that has come out is Anderson .Paak's K-Pops, which played at the most recent Tribeca and Toronto festivals, and it's going to be released by some like really small brand new distributor
Mhm.
sometime next year. So uh, th- Hollywood's been trying to do this forever. So when K-pop Demon Hunters was announced, Sony Animation is a powerhouse, right? Sony Animation does Spider-Verse. So the concept art looked really cool, but the title, like everybody knows that the title is really stupid.
Yeah.
K-pop Demon Hunters sounds like a working title. And to me, it sounded like just sort of like an algorithm, sort of like, what's popular among the kids? Let's throw this all together. And so I was very cynical, and I did not believe there was any sincerity or heart behind it. And I should apologize to Maggie King and Chris Applehans for that. But
They're having the less
again,
laugh, don't worry,
they're fine. They're
They're
fine.
doing
And I'm
okay.
so happy for them. I'm so happy for them. So yeah, like I wasn't a believer. Sony, the distributing arm, clearly wasn't enough of a believer. So they sold it to Netflix.
In
We
2021, by the way, which I think is important to note
Mhm.
because the state of the industry at that time, you have to remember that, a lot of the studios, most studios weren't necessarily starting or streaming distribution arms for their companies. And so they worked out a deal with Netflix to essentially have a pathway to getting projects distributed during a time when theatrical was super low and there was a lot of fear in the air. And so this deal was actually made at that time, which is just,
Mhm.
again, a symptom of the problem of how long it takes for things to get made and get distributed and how you don't know what the market is actually going to be doing by the time a project comes out. And it's, I think, a cautionary tale that a lot of people are going to
Mhm.
really walk away with thinking and having a little bit more long lead planning around this stuff. So,
Yeah, that's exactly right. Obviously a sign of that sort of like latter day pandemic times. But also, I personally believe it was a little bit of a blessing in disguise for this film, right? Like everybody in the industry has been playing the what if game. What if K-pop Demon Hunters had received a traditional theatrical release from Sony? Would we be where we are now? I I'm not 100% on that, you
yeah.
know? And I think a lot of that is because of the bias against the film, like, just go like, again, before it came out, like, I think that a lot of people might be willing to check out a potentially goofy movie on Netflix at home. Not as many people are gonna be willing to check out a potentially goofy movie by paying upwards of $10 per person
Yeah.
at the theater. Um, we have seen turnarounds before, right? Elemental 2 years ago was able to overcome a disastrous opening weekend and basically build on word of mouth to eventually make over 400 million at the global box office,
Yeah.
right? But that's Pixar, which I think tends to have longer theatrical
Yeah. For
windows,
sure.
right, than other studios. And that theatrical window is narrowing every year. So in 2025, I don't know if Sony and exhibitors would have had the patience that K-pop Demon Hunters would have needed to build that momentum. So that's one thing, like, maybe,
Yeah.
Netflix is the ideal platform for discoverability and virality.
Yeah.
Like, it's really you can see now that Netflix is capable of creating these, like, pervasive pop culture moments in a way that, like, not like, very few other platforms can.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think made it a blessing is because, Sony remained and you know the terminology better than I do, right? Like, what is that? They were the production company,
Yeah, they were the
Sony
production
Animation.
company and they creatively produced it, but as I understand it, Netflix financed the whole thing too. So they it
That's
was a
exactly right.
negative pickup in a way. So they kind of handled all of the production, all of the creative, everything around it, and then put it in a nice little package and just turned it over to Netflix and go, "Here you go. Hope you raise this baby right," kinda.
Exactly. That's part of the deal. I think that Sony has a couple of deals with Netflix. One is an animation output deal, but the other is a direct to streaming deal where Netflix agrees to make, I think it's a minimum of 2 to 3 movies, 2 or 3
Mhm.
movies every year and just put them direct to streaming, meaning like Sony will develop it, Sony will produce it, but Netflix is footing the production bill and then like adding like a 20% profit. This is all reporting from Matt Bellany of Puck.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I think that was what that latter deal is what K-pop Demon Hunters was under.
Yes.
Um, what that did though was as because I think when Maggie Kang and Chris Applehan's the directors pitched, so Sony passed on distributing, then Netflix had a first look that direct to streaming is a first look deal. So they had to pitch Netflix next. And they had they didn't have a finished movie. They had I think some I don't know enough about animation terms, but I think they had a few demo songs. I think they had some footage, some sort of rough footage to show, but Netflix bought it. And so I think that really freed up Sony, Netflix is footing the bill. So the notes and that they're getting are not like, oh my gosh, I'm worried that this isn't going to make money or I'm worried that this isn't going
Yeah.
to like, they're just like, they can just think the good of the story. They can really make notes from a place of pure create, like there's no conflict of interest
Correct.
between creative and financial. I think by separating those two things, um, you know, Maggie King and Chris Applehans have been nothing but completely complementary to the Sony animation team, right? Led by Christine Belson. And they've said that they gave their notes, but they trusted us
You have to trust the
and
creatives
your
that
artist.
your artists, and I think it takes a lot of humility and lack of ego to just know where your job is and where you can actually sometimes the best thing you can do is step out of the way and let brilliant people be brilliant. And I think we've in the last like 10, 15 years, we've been in this moment where, we see how top heavy projects are with how many producers and everybody has to give notes and everybody has to have a POV. And sometimes they're helpful POVs, but sometimes it is almost like, well, I just got to have something I can say so that I can say that I said something, even if it's not in the best interest of the project. And so I do feel optimistic that one of the wins, if you will, of this market contraction we've been in is I think that teams are going to get smaller. We're going to have less people, less cooks in the kitchen, which traditionally creates more space for creative projects like this to have a POV, to have a voice, and to blossom. I think this is the perfect example of what can happen if all of the elements, at least from a creative standpoint, I'm sure Sony doesn't feel like about that from a distribution standpoint, but like if you just empower the right people to do the thing and then you step out of the way, and more importantly, you give a project and a process the time that it takes to be done properly, because we know with animation, like you can't rush some of this stuff, and it checks all the boxes, right? It's the actual animation style, it's the music is exceptional, it's in pop charts, it's blowing records all over the board. And it's contained. It's like it's contained in the world in the way that they made it so, and it pulls you in. It's just great storytelling within an animation container that appeals to a lot of different kinds of people. And I hope that this is a reminder to the industry that this is the best case scenario of what can happen if you just let people do what they're here to do.
Exactly. And I'd love to use this as to get more specific on some examples
Yeah.
of some specific decisions that were made that ended up really key to its success, but that you don't see Hollywood making every time. So I think one is, so I mentioned all of those other K-pop projects that like still don't exist, right? I've been stuck in development hell. So every single one of those projects had some sort of Western lead-in. So every single one of those projects, I read one that the main character of a K-pop movie was a white man, you know?
Yep.
I've also watched a Bruce Lee movie where the main character was a white man who doesn't exist. It was just a made up white man. That's like an actual Bruce Lee movie that came out like within the last 10 years. So, like
Wonderful.
there's so much concern that like nobody, this is going to be so niche and unrelatable unless we have a Western POV. But the other K-pop projects, like, they're like, there's one is set in America. One is about a K-pop band that, gets lost in Texas on a road trip. And so they're like, oh, that culture clash. There is, so there's always sort of like they feel like we need some sort of like Western handhold for the audience. And K-pop Demon Hunters doesn't have that. it is all of it. So the only Korean American character in it is Zoe, one of the members of Huntrix, the girl band. And there's even like a hilarious line when they introduce her where they're like, she's Korean American and she's from a place called Burbank,
Yeah.
and it's just like a funny little Easter egg that instantly shows you that we are like, that's the exotic, that's foreign,
Yes, yes, yes.
this is Seoul. This is, Maggie Kang is Korean Canadian, Chris, I think, is American. The movie's in English, as it should be, it's fine, and so that's enough. Like, they trusted that the movie is in English and also in the zillion other languages that all Netflix stuff comes out in.
Yeah.
Like, you're just instantly thrown into the world of K-pop, and I love that you said, Carolina, that you are not a K-pop fan.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's what this movie managed to do was, I think, by being very, like, by being very authentic to, like K-pop stans, uh, they kind of just trusted that the universality of its themes, which, as the movie reveals itself, are about, like, shame, self-acceptance, trusting in your friendships, um, not trying to put up this, like, facade of perfection, right? These are very universal themes. They trusted in the universality of its themes and in the real entertainment value of its jokes, of its songs, of its animation style. So they didn't try to, like, hedge their bets on the quality of this entertainment. They were just like, "It's about K-pop. How unrealistic would it be to try to like have an aside? It's like, well, in K-pop they do these things called variety shows and blah, blah. They were just like, whatever. You're
Yeah,
gonna be along for the ride and you'll pick it up. Or you won't
exactly.
pick up every detail and it's fine. I noticed even like upon rewatch, like there was this one like, their Konglish is like Spanglish.
Mhm.
Konglish is Korean English code switching, and, like, they use a lot of Konglish throughout the movie, and there's this one part, when like, it's very small, like, Huntrix and Saja Boys sort of meet face to face for the first time in front of a variety show audience. Variety shows are very popular in Korea where, like, K-pop groups, like, are always coming on, and, Huntrix refers to Saja Boys. They're like, "Oh, we're just here to, support and celebrate our hubaes for their debut. Hube is Korean for like your junior,
Mhm.
like it's like an honorific or like it's like a formal and so they did I noticed it the second time I watched. I was like, "Oh, they just literally said hube and didn't bother to explain that at all even though this is an English language movie."
Yes.
They were like, "Whatever." Like,
Yeah.
like we don't need like a stop. Like, we are here to congratulate our juniors about, like
Right,
they were
or
just
like
like,
a text,
"What
a
else?"
graphic that comes on explaining you to some in some way. I think it's a lot of trust of the audience that the audience is seasoned enough and smart enough that they're gonna figure this out, and as someone who grew up bilingual, like, I appreciate that so much because I don't need the explanation, I need the context. I'm never necessarily gonna use that word, it's not in my
Mhm.
sort of, like, repertoire, but I get the intention of what they're saying based on the context of the scene, and I just wanna back up that, like, yes, although I didn't grow up, like, obsessed with K-pop like a lot of people I know, and I have cousins who did before it was cute and, like, sort of more in the
Mhm.
mainstream, I
K-pop is
deeply
huge in Brazil.
it's huge. I mean, to trust. Like,
Huge.
my cousin was here, was showing me all the dances, and I was like my mind was blown because I feel,
Yep.
like, very old, very elder millennial in that sense, but I appreciate that it resonates with so many people, and it's not for me, but, like, Spice Girls was for me. That was
Mhm.
my generation, right? And I felt watching this that I'm like, "Man, this is like the Spice Girls of, like, 12-year-olds today." And that's how it's evolved, and I love that, and I was like, "I get it now." It doesn't mean I'm gonna go, pivot and have this deep interest in K-pop necessarily, but I can appreciate it so much for what it brings without having to be a rabid fan of the genre, right? And see the value that it brings. And also I think that the weaving in of the demon aspect of it was really actually interesting and something that could be like really cheesy and eye roll. And we're just gonna, like you said, throw everything into a log line and make it like sound cool. Like actually added real stakes to this world that I think if they didn't have the fact that she's got this secret, she is part demon and she has to figure out how to coexist and like she's going to betray her friends and all of these aspects of owning who you are and your identity and how that is so scary, right? To me, that's like the theme of it, whether you are a hybrid of two things, whatever that may be. I love that that is like a really deep messaging that it also gives to viewers everywhere and to kids that like you can own the parts of you that are potentially
Mhm.
perceived as unattractive or as less than and make that your superpower. And I think that's like the messaging that we always need, but it delivered in such a great way that like, I can't wait to show my son this when he's sort of a little older. Until then, I'll just be the one, like, playing Golden over and over, like I'm
It's
12.
it It's so interesting that you said that because that actually the demon hunter part of the story is actually what came first. The K-pop aspect of it was the last piece to be applied. The story originated with Maggie, who basically always wanted to do something that drew on Korean folklore. And she was fascinated by the aesthetic of, and so all the design of the Saja boys, when they sing like their your idol, like the hats and everything, and then like the demons' faces. I asked my husband, who's Korean American or Korean Canadian, like he was like, "Oh yeah, that's all taken from like the way that demons and like mythical creatures like the tiger, like they're all depicted, right?" So
Mhm.
there's a real cultural root to those things. And so that's the part she came up with first. And then she kind of realized that the K-pop, which you can tell she and Chris are legitimately not newcomers, like the opposite of outsiders to that fandom. Like they had a lot of their own understanding of it. And that sort of like became the perfect metaphor and the vehicle for it. So the Demon Hunter part came first and then the K-pop came second. And I didn't know that. I originally assumed that it was like, let's do something K-pop, which is I'm sure the conversation that's happening in all these studios right now, like, what's a K-pop thing we can have? And I think that's cautionary tale number 1 I wanna say for, like, takeaways, if you don't mind me, like,
No, I
going into
love that,
this.
and I wanna get into that and also the idea of fetishizing any
Yeah.
genre, any group, so go for it.
Yeah. So so we see this all the time, right? This is what happened when Barbie, like, became the biggest movie of 2023. Like, instead of people being like, "Oh, I think that audiences really resonate with, like, clever stories about female existentialism," which was my takeaway about Barbie. No, they were like, "No, more movies about toys. That's what we should do, more movies about toys." Lena Dunham doing Polly Pocket, which maybe will be great,
I hope
again,
it
she's an
is. I hope
auteur.
it is. I love
I hope
Polly
it
Pocket.
is, but that won't be because that's what the studios were looking for.
No.
So you see, like, this is the narrative, like, after Crazy Rich Asians came out, it was like, "Oh, Hollywood is so hot for Asian stuff." There was, I think after that, like, right before the pandemic, like, every trade, including the trade I used to work for, did all these stories about, like, everything is a Latino reboot. Everything is a Latino reboot, right? Like, what is that alien CWB movie from back in the day?
Oh god. I
Do you
don't know.
remember? Whatever. I thought we were the same. We've forgotten because we have mom brain, but
Yeah, it's because of our babies, not
everything was a
because yeah.
Latino reboot.
Yeah.
So Roswell, right?
Roswell,
They
okay.
rebooted Roswell. They rebooted Roswell, but they branded it as a Latino reboot, which really like can hurt the project from both sides
Yes.
sometimes.
Well,
So
no, all the
um
every time mostly because when
every thank you.
the moment that you brand something as, like, the Latino spin or the Asian take on, you're saying what it's signaling is that this is probably not for the general audience, and that's not
Mhm.
okay, right? It's like saying, well, K-pop Demon Hunters is really just really made for Koreans and people that love K-pop. It's like, no,
Right.
it's for anyone who feels seen in the themes that we're gonna explore. When you let people be creative and take their passion, right? Maggie and Chris having this probably 20, 30-year deep knowledge of K-pop, something they love. They bring in an outsider like me in a way that it's like, I'll never have that deep knowledge about it because I didn't grow up with it in the same way. And I don't want to, and I don't need to. I want to be
Exactly.
transported into your world for 90 minutes and be like, wow, what a fun time I get to have in the brains of these beautiful, brilliant, creative people.
I 100% agree. I think that the the thing is that K-pop Demon Hunters, sure, it appeals to some K-pop stans. Not all of them, but a lot, are like, yeah, this rings true to me. Sure, it will be a gateway project for new fans to really get into K-pop, and they'll say, "How did you get into K-pop?" And I watched K-pop Demon Hunters. And then there will be people who enjoy the movie who will never like get into K-pop ever again, or like, and that is fine because the point of the film was to just make, like you said, an entertaining, good film for what it is. It's not
Yeah.
attempting to proselytize for anything else. And that's why, again, it didn't have to have a conflict of interest and creatively compromise. But the reason why it would be a mistake I mean, there's so many reasons. First of all, I really am not comfortable with the idea of any sort of culture broadly being a trend because it's fetishistic. And also, when you're a trend, it means that someday your 15 minutes will be up and Hollywood will be hot, horny, and white again, as a recent New York Times op ed told us. Like, you don't want to be a trend. It is not good to be a trend because it means that that clock is ticking, right? It can't be. And it's also wildly superficial because we saw this with Crazy Rich Asians, honestly. It's like so much Asian stuff got greenlit, and then, like, nothing really came out of that post Crazy Rich Asians boom, and, like,
Yeah.
I spoke with a lot of folks who were involved in those projects who told me the infrastructure simply wasn't there to, like, to be able to support this influx of, there just weren't enough, like, there weren't enough actors who were seasoned to be
Yeah.
leads. There weren't enough, like, there wasn't enough experience among that talent pool. And then among, I say that carefully, experience. I'm not saying talent,
Right.
right?
Right.
There's just, anyways, people, you're just shoving, you're just trying to like hastily jump on the bandwagon. And the truth is that nothing there's no project that centers any sort of historically marginalized culture that can achieve mainstream success without being damn good.
Mhm.
So it's like that, like, you don't have the benefit of the doubt to be mediocre and be good. Like, you're not a Transformers movie.
Right. You have to be exceptional.
Honestly,
You have to be
you
exceptional.
have to be exceptional. And so all of the stuff that's hit, if you think about like Squid Game, Parasite, Everything Everywhere All at Once, like things that just kind of like came out of nowhere and just and became broadly appealing because none of those things can break those records if it's only Asians or only Koreans watching them. There just simply aren't enough,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And so like they didn't just happen to be good because people like Asian stuff. They had to basically be exceptional to overcome enormous bias to break those records. So you cannot expect to just greenlight a K-pop thing and become the next K-pop Demon Hunters if you did not give if your talent isn't super gifted to begin
That's right.
with.
That's right.
If your talent isn't super gifted to begin with and you didn't give them like the all of the resources they need to really bring their, like, vision to life, and so I'm kind of fearful for, like, hasty bandwagon jumping because what you see a lot of times is something will hit big, and then everybody's like, "Oh my god, everybody loves Latino stuff, everybody loves Asian stuff, whatever," and then they just do a ton of, like, sloppy B-level things, and, like, B-level, it's like, Asian stuff is out, man.
Yeah. I think that's where, like, all the examples you mentioned are of individuals and artists and storytellers who have given themselves as well the time that it takes to develop and harness their own perspective, right? Like, the Daniels were only able to make Everything Everywhere in the way that they did for the price point that they did because they had spent almost 2 decades
Mhm.
perfecting different aspects of their filmmaking style to be able to deliver a film that no one wanted to spend more than $10 million on because of the amount of VFX, and they knew how to make it and they knew they could deliver because they had spent a decade practicing that. You go and watch Turn Down for What, like the music video that they did, and there's so many elements that they use in everywhere. So you're like, okay, they really perfected and mastered certain crafts of what makes them inherently unique, and giving folks the time and giving artists taking the time that it takes to find and nurture these skill sets of your own so that when the market is ready, you don't become just an outlier. Like, you've been delivering at an exceptional volume for a while.
Mhm.
It's just that now things are hitting, right? All the stars are aligning in the way that you can't predict. But I think it's why we have to encourage everyone, but particularly folks that come from these underrepresented communities, to chase excellence and be in the pursuit of
Yes.
excellence, because that is the only way that your work is going to resonate and make waves, and that we won't just be trends or fads or the one every 5 years that kind of pops off.
Yeah, that's right. If you're creative who represents any sort of niche interest or identity, niche as you put in air quotes, like, you don't have the luxury to cut corners. And if you are a studio who thinks that you are capitalizing on that, like, culture as a trend, if you cut corners, you're not going to get the results that you hope for. The takeaway from this, it would be wrong to say, like, oh, anything K-pop is going to hit like this, or anything Asian or anything Korean is going to hit like this. I think it's more accurate to reframe that slightly and say, clearly, being a non-K-pop fan, or clearly something being Korean, culturally Korean or culturally any other sort of Asian or Asian American identity, is not a barrier for audiences to find this universally appealing.
Yeah,
It's not a barrier, because that is always used as an excuse to pass on things, and it is just not true. I'm not trying to say that everything Asian or Korean is automatically popular, but what I'm saying is that it is like, you cannot use that as an excuse to be like, "Oh my gosh, this is such a small country," or "This is a much small world," like, whatever. Like, Korea is the 29th most populous country in the world. That's
yeah,
not that high, right? It's just a small place. If anything, it just should just teach you that, like representing some sort of niche subculture, it's arguable if K-pop is niche, but for sake of argument, let's say it is. That's just not a barrier to entry with audiences if the work is good.
that's right. I agree. So then it's just make good work, which is easier said than done when most people are looking for shortcuts. And now part of the danger of AI is that, you are leveraging, if you're using AI to help brainstorm or write stuff for you. Like, even in preparing for this, there were many articles I found, or one in specific that was like fully written by AI. I'm a big proponent of using AI to empower you in what you're doing, but not using it as a crutch for what you're doing. And so you still have to put in the work. That's the part that people don't want to hear. Like, you have to put in the work to become exceptional. And there's so much invisible stuff that people don't see, and you just have to be willing to go there, right? And that this will be another example that we have as a comp of, like, here's what can happen with original IP, unknown actors, within a genre like animation. People sort of still kind of write it off if you give it all the right elements that it needs to achieve its highest potential. So,
Exactly. We didn't have this conversation when adolescence also became a phenomenon.
yeah.
Maybe they're saying, where's the next adolescence? But they're not somehow reducing it to, like, its superficial identity markers, the way
Yeah.
you see it happen with all of these things. They know that people went to see adolescence because it was so damn good.
Yeah.
But it's so easy for people to say that, like, oh, K-pop Demon Hunters succeeded because people just watch anything K-pop, not because it was so damn good.
Yeah.
That's my soapbox.
And, just to end on a positive note that's very Huntrix themed, I think we're going up and up. It's our moment.
This is good news.
This
This
is
is
good
good news
news.
for everybody who works in the entertainment
Yeah.
industry. It is so wonderful to be able to come on here and talk about something, about why it succeeded, and not to call out why something was problematic. People made money.
Yeah.
People got to see what's possible. People felt good. It's a positive story that is, has a message that is really healthy for everybody to hear.
Yeah.
It's so fun. The bops are the radio. Like,
Golden
great way
summer.
to end the summer.
Golden summer. Well, thank you so much. Always a treat to have you on.
Thank you, Carolina. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.